Dan Henderson, one of the most lethal knockout artists of all time in MMA. A man who cemented his legacy on raw grit, crushing power, and an overhand right so lethal they call it the H-bomb. But beneath the highlight reels and iconic moments, there was a fighter who defied the clock, a rivalry that shook the UFC, and battles that became full-on wars. Today we go inside the career of Dan "Hendo" Henderson. From crushing knockouts to debatable decisions, from pride to the UFC, this is the tale of a man who never fled. Let's get started.
It began as a feud beyond the octagon. Meet Michael Bisping, the arrogant British bruiser with a penchant for trash talk, and Henderson's opponent on the other side, a throwback fighter who kept his mouth closed and his fists open. Alliances were frayed and nerves were stretched during the Ultimate Fighter. National pride, personal disrespect, and one man who wouldn't shut his mouth.
We can stand here and bicker all day. Whoever wins the next bout gets to pick training times. July 2009, UFC 100. One of the biggest events in the history of MMA. Henderson versus Bisping. No more talk, just fists. Bisping using speed and movement. Henderson prowling like a predator waiting to deliver the ultimate shot.
And then, boom! The H-bomb struck.
A right hand alone, and Bisping was down before he hit the mat. But Henderson had no intention of letting up. He flew at him, planting one final hammer fist to make sure.
That last punch, Dan, was that necessary? Chuckles, to shut him up a little bit. That moment, MMA history in the making.
When he left the UFC, Henderson entered Strikeforce, but with some difficulty. Against Jake Shields, he came out strong, almost finishing the bout in round one. But Shields, the man was a human anaconda. He wrapped Henderson up and dominated the rest of the bout, giving Hendo a rough loss.
But champions don't remain down. Henderson recovered, transitioning to light heavyweight and knocking out foes with the same merciless efficiency. And then, there was one of his greatest victories. Fedor Emelianenko, the last emperor, arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time.
Fedor came out firing, throwing bombs. Henderson, he saw an opening, darted behind him, and with a single dynamite uppercut, Fedor was gone. A legend fell to the H-bomb.
Henderson returned to the UFC and was thrust right into a war, a 5-round shootout with Shogun Rua. Let's be honest, this wasn't merely a fight. This was a battle of endurance. Two all-time greats, throwing everything they had at each other, refusing to quit. By the final round, both men were spent, battered, standing only on willpower. The verdict, Henderson won it, but fans understood both fighters had emerged victorious in their own manner.
By 2016, Henderson was 46. Most fighters would have hung it up. Not Hendo. He had one more mission, to steal the middleweight belt from an old nemesis, Michael Bisping. Bisping, the new champ, had honed his craft. But Henderson? He still possessed that right hand.
I knew I wasn't gonna do better than last time. That was a grand slam. The battle was ferocious. Bisping, quicker, volume striking. Henderson, relentless, patient, and waiting for his opportunity. And in round one, he seized the moment. The H-bomb struck once more. Bisping went down. The crowd went wild, and for an instant, it seemed like history would repeat itself. The battle was ferocious. Bisping, quicker, volume striking. Henderson, relentless, patient, and waiting for his opportunity. And in round one, he seized the moment. The H-bomb struck once more. Bisping went down. The crowd went wild, and for an instant, it seemed like history would repeat itself. But Bisping lived. 5 rounds of war. And when the verdict was read, I beat him up. I don't know how I lost that decision, but it is what it is. That was it. Henderson retired. No belt, but a legacy that would never be questioned.